Hey everybody, welcome to Monday. And over the weekend, we did the first session for the NPCs and sub bosses and the writing and all that stuff for Song of Sparkle Muffin. And it was really great energy, and people seemed really super enthused and they got what we were doing. So that's really exciting. So I'm happy about that. And also, Mary Jess, the art music director on the game, turned me on to a deep dive into the Argentine short story writer Jorge Luis Borges. And if you're aware of this author, that's where my brain is at right now. Mind-blowing, brilliant stuff, but super dense. And you need to know a lot of other references to get what he's doing. And so mind right now is, if the Foucault video on Friday wasn't dense enough for you. But this is why you love me, right? This is why you love me, my weirdness. If you want to put some money into my weirdness, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. I was also moving furniture, and so I'm snuffy. But yes, so these are all the caveats in what I'm about to talk about. And I decided to talk about this before the whole thing about Joe Rogan getting in trouble again, dropping N-bombs. Chill. I will provide nuance for this, but my greater point was the head scratching I did at an admitted minority of comments, but comments being in the minority does not mean they're not relevant. And I always find it interesting when people don't realize they've won. And they can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And I see this a lot with this culture war stuff. I get that some people are very defensive of Joe Rogan because they think that, he can say the things they can't. And so, they have to be in solidarity with him because reasons. I'm not trying to sound glib. It's just super flawed logic, because if he can say the things you can't, you don't need to defend him. But there's a deeper reason to not do that when someone is saying, I don't like him, I think his content is actively bad, but I defend his right to exist. Because if he gets in trouble again, you have been decent to people who are trying to meet you in a reasonable midpoint. And if you are cool with people who don't agree with you on everything, but agree with you on a pretty significant thing, then when there is further conflict, they're likely to give you more benefit of the doubt. And right now, I think the more rabid Joe Rogan fans are not helping Joe Rogan. Because, let's face it, a 20-minute clip reel of him dropping the N-bomb over a 12-year, according to him, 12-year period, that's bad. Now, some people, I will preface, it looks bad. In some ways, it is bad. And because people are going to freak out over me having an opinion that doesn't move the needle in any way whatsoever, let me explain what I mean by that. Within Joe Rogan's life, we know you don't use that word, especially if you are a white person. But, the word is divisive even among African-American, Afro-Caribbean, and Black communities. I use all of them because people identify differently. Not all Black people think the same things. I've gotten people screaming at me that I'm racist over Mortal Kombat 11. Because they didn't understand what I was saying about timeline alterations and free will. But, there are some things we just know you don't do. And we've known it for, my God, when I was in middle school in the early 19... No, when I was in middle school in the late 80s, we knew you didn't say that word. Like, we knew. And the people that did say that word used it to get a rise out of people because they knew it was a bad word. So that's the thing about doing edgy stuff. You really gotta, I mean, Joe Rogan said it was taken out of context, but, you know, no, it really wasn't. People are going to, yes, it was. There's no need to use the word in the context he used it. If you are studying historical stuff, all right, I'm almost going to jump up. If you're studying historical stuff and the word was used in a work of historical fiction, yeah, I mean, when I was doing history and when I was reading, older works of English literature, that word comes up in multiple contexts, referring to multiple different types of people, none of them flattering. I don't think we should erase history for comfort. Those of us who study it know there's some pretty horrible stuff that happened historically. We're prepared for that. But if you're just a podcaster and you're quoting someone, you don't need to say it. That's my opinion. Now, if you have a different opinion, this is fine, right? This is me offering an olive branch so that we can have different views and not, fight in a YouTube comment section until Friday about this. That's what that's designed to do. This is my opinion. What's that worth? I don't think very much on this point. So you're allowed to have a different view. Now, here's what I will say, and this is not just my opinion. This is more media analysis. This will hurt Joe Rogan in a way the COVID stuff won't. Because the COVID stuff is fairly new. He's certainly not alone in that. It's less outside whatever remaining Overton window for behavior there still is. The reality is that, Joe Rogan had, Sanjay Gupta on for like 3 hours on his show, as well as these guys that, spew nonsense and call it scientific opinion. But, Joe Rogan shot himself in the foot. This is opinion to me, because he said this is over a period of 12 years, but edited together in a 20-minute clip, it looks really bad. This isn't a period of time where he was being an edgelord, like James Gunn was on Twitter for a few years. He admitted himself he was using that word periodically for 12 years. 12 whole years as an adult. What? And if he's saying it in public, he's saying it in private too. This is a problem. Now, he is clearly stopped. He clearly knows it's wrong now. And people with more power than me are going to have to decide what to do about that. I don't think I'm in a position to even say what they should do about that. It's all going to come down to whether people think his apology was adequate. There were structural problems with it in that you don't try to explain use of that word. You have to Justin Trudeau it when he got caught doing blackface. It was stupid. It was dumb. I'm pissed at myself. And he just repeated that every time he was asked for like months. You do not, if you really want to get out from under something like that, it is not wise to attempt any sort of explanation about why you did it. And nobody cares if you're ashamed or whether it's painful, as Joe Rogan started a statement with. Now that's besides the point. there's a big difference between what I think they should do and what I think will happen. And it's sort of even odds. I think he'll probably hang on just because I bet you if you broke it down, Joe Rogan's audience is heavily white. And so his audience is not going to care whether Spotify drops him or not. His podcast will go on. And unfortunately, he may actually pick up some fans from this who may have lapsed or, thought he was selling out with the COVID thing or something like that. He can just, unless Spotify owns his podcast, which I think is unlikely. And even then, he can just do another podcast. They can't stop him from doing a podcast, right? He may have a non-compete for 6 months, but Joe Rogan's not going anywhere. His star may dip, it may get a bit tarnished, but I don't think this is going to take him out, in part because anybody who had been following him for a while knows this was in his past, which is why the Spotify deal was so odd. At least to me, there's other stuff that he has said on his shows that if somebody goes through and clips it all together will look equally bad. Okay, not equally bad. There's possibly no more charged word in the American English language than the N-word. Possibly no other. I don't even think the C-bomb is as charged as people can get away with saying that, maybe, but the N-word, no, man, not if you're a white person, no, and that's fair. And yes, there was a time where people were more forgiving of that word. You still didn't say it repeatedly over a 12-year period. You just, that is a lengthy pattern of behavior, and that's going to be the thing that's going to sting him. Now, why? Well, in part because for people who are not fans of Joe Rogan, the whole Joe Rogan phenomenon is profoundly obnoxious. And, with Trudeau doing blackface, and I'm not saying any of this is right or wrong, and again, people have the right to be totally unforgiving of the fact that he did that. That's an individual mileage may vary thing, but Trudeau at least had a track record of reaching out to minority groups and seeming to give a crap and seeming to care and be sensitive and listen since the whole blackface thing. So people in some minority communities were like, it was painful to see that, but I don't think that's the person he is today. Joe Rogan continues to be obnoxious, and his fan base weaponizes that obnoxiousness and picks stupid fights with Howard Stern of all people. And anybody who dares to say, I don't like Joe Rogan, I said I feel my IQ drop every time I've tried to watch him. But he deserves the right to have a show, They won't let it lie there. Okay, you're allowed to not like it. They don't continue to try to convince me, or they don't get out up a soapbox and say, well, I do think he's brilliant, or I do no, leave it alone. Leave it alone, because he does do. This isn't even edgy. This is dicey stuff. It was not appropriate for the medium he was doing it in, just because it's not a live comedy show. It's not, like what Robert Patrick's doing on Peacemaker, where it's very clearly a character. He said those words as him, as a real person, not a fictional character who's a horrible dirtbag, right? And a flagrant racist. I mean, the whole point of that character, almost spoiled, on Peacemaker is that he is a horrendous racist, and they want the full bloom of that to come through because it informs why Peacemaker is who he is. And I think art, even comedy, even satirical comedy, has the right to reflect reality, especially the ugly parts, right? But a podcast, no, you don't need to say that word when you're quoting the word. No, you don't. No, you don't. And this is part of how sort of the completely open, loosely regulated reality of the internet, it's a double-edged sword, because if there was a station, or if there was, a regulatory body who had the ability to say, no, you use those words, you get fined, then he would have been punished at the time. And now we could say, okay, he did it, he was punished for it. The way Howard Stern did back in the day. Howard Stern did stuff. He knew he was going to get fined. He got fined. He either paid the fine or fought the fine. He was prepared to accept the consequences of what he did because he believed in free speech. Now, Howard Stern back in the day said a lot of utterly asinine things. Part of that was part of the point. Part of it was he was sort of an immature idiot, and he himself will admit that now. Now, should people be canceled off the face of the earth for being an immature idiot? No. But there is a sense of fairness where people feel like there needs to be some repercussions for bad behavior. And this is why these, cancellation pileups happen, these clip reels, because he got away with it for years and years and years, and his star just continued to rise. Nobody seemed to care that he was dropping N-bombs on his podcast. And that's the part where I think he's in real trouble, because the people who facilitated that are not going to take responsibility for it. They're going to throw him under the bus before they admit that this was a systemic thing that allowed a guy like Joe Rogan to do that in public on a podcast for 12 freaking years, right? This is the nuance of it. He doesn't have absolute power. People let him do that. Spotify should have done due diligence about who they were taking on when they took his show on. Somebody had to find that. I knew about it. I think he's dropped so many slurs about so many people over the years that anybody who was aware of him for any prolonged period of time was like, that is his brand. At the time, I don't think anybody expected him to have like a Spotify deal because of that. Now, is that his fault? Did he make Spotify give him a deal? No. Spotify chose to do that. But thing about media companies is they tend to be profoundly unaccountable for decisions like that. The exception being Netflix, where they're like, we ran it, we stand by it. That's a principled stance. The network is being responsible for the content they chose. Now with Spotify, this predates the Spotify deal, but they still acquired him as a personality. So they're on the hook to an extent. And that's where the trouble for him is going to come in. This is not about morality. This is about the reality of the entertainment industry. Now, they may try to ride it out, but, are they willing to lose? Are they willing to lose more Black artists? This is what's going to happen now. This is the cluster, that is forming now with Spotify. And who knows? They may make a swift decision, and by the time this video comes out, he's already been dumped, or it may go on for a while. Watch this space, right? But I think it's worth talking about the system that allows somebody like Joe Rogan to exist And that's more interesting to me than debating Joe Rogan. But I try to make that point, and some, not all, some Joe Rogan fans just want to fight me on whether Joe Rogan is good or not. And I go back to why I suggest perhaps not do that going forward. Perhaps let people not like stuff while you like stuff, and let people like stuff you don't like. Because one of the things that does matter when entertainers get into trouble like this is what their asshole to awesome ratio is as a public commodity, as a public personality. You know, Whoopi Goldberg got suspended for 2 weeks over comments she made about the Holocaust. You know, Whoopi Goldberg has some demerits in one column and a lot of positives in another column. So, okay, they determined 2 weeks was appropriate. I think, again, that was smart on behalf of The View because she was punished for her comments, but not canceled. I think that was a great solution. And some people may say that's pretty harsh, but in the long term, it's 2 weeks. She's freaking rich. She's been on the show forever. She'll be right back. She took her lumps. They can say they acted. She did not just get away with something that I got what she was trying to say, but she was still factually inaccurate. And the point of nuance was lost again on the format. You can talk about that stuff in something that's not The View. Again, maybe a didn't read the room thing. And I know we talked about didn't read the room as kind of annoying, and I'm being kind of facetious there. But, you know, Whoopi Goldberg is respected by her colleagues. She's been a team player for the network. She has some goodwill banked. These more extreme personalities, these personalities that are relevant because of who they piss off. And, you know, I have a background in this. I have a background in offensive comedy, you know. I worked on a show where I stand by what we did, but a lot of people said it was sexist and misogynist at the time. And the thing is, when you're on that high wire act, you don't have the banking of goodwill that somebody who plays it a little safer, a lot safer does. Especially when your fans act aggressively toward others in your name. And can someone completely control their fan base? No. Can they tell them to cool it? Yes. You guys know that I don't let people come here and just insult people in the comment sections, right? You know that's a rule. Say what you want about me, but be nice to other people. Okay, thanks. There are things you can do. You can set an example. And, you know, Joe Rogan got the bit in his teeth, and he started, I'll say it, he started dick swinging on things, and people picked up on that melody line, and this makes him vulnerable now. And I'm not saying that's fair. I'm not saying that's moral. That's just the realities. And so if you are a believer in free speech, which I am, you have to give. You have to let people have their views. You can't claim to be a radical free speech proponent and then shout down or try to shout down or get aggressive with people when they have views you don't agree with. You can't have it both ways. You just seem like a bully, because I do believe in more free speech than the average person. And so, you know, I think I need to give someone the right to say, no, we should censor speech. We should have stronger hate speech laws, because I am a believer in free speech, which means people have the right to have that view. And I believe that the marketplace of opinions, if allowed to function, will eventually show that I'm right and they're wrong. And I believe that because I think that when you start censoring, when you start completely censoring words, like just zero sum, no, you say the word, you're gone forever, that the first people that get silenced are the most marginalized. They don't have the right to reclaim the word. There becomes this whole culture war surrounding words. I just really don't think people should be afraid of words. I think that there is a time and a place to discuss appropriateness of language based on artistic context. We had this discussion with the Song of Sparkle Muffin group. It came up, and I'm going to plant this flag right now, that one of the backers who in the writing module was like, please, I will take anything out you tell me to take out. But once it's released, we stand by it. We do not capitulate if people start freaking out and getting offended. And I said, yeah, absolutely. We'd already basically decided that within the dev team. But, yeah. And I said, we're putting character voice into this game as character voice. It's a satirical game. Boss Fight was a satirical series. It goofs on tropes. It is impossible to do that and not offend someone, because someone will not get the joke. Story of my life, people not knowing I'm joking. But yeah, once it's out, it's out. There was no hate in it. There was no malice. That people from the affected group were consulted. It was done sensitively and people were involved. You have to stand by it. And, that's a choice we made. But the trade-off to that is, no, there's some words we're going to say, no, we decide we're not going to go here, because it's just not right for the tone and the tenor of the game. It's not the story we're trying to tell. It's not a moral thing. It's a stylistic thing. And to me, that's profoundly different. That is a profoundly different thing as a creator, because you're not moralizing. You're stylizing. And I wish we could have that conversation. But when people like Joe Rogan fly high on not just the right to offend, but the right to misinform, it makes everything harder, because people on both sides are feeling like they're losing a grip on what I think it really comes down to, is that they don't feel like they can escape things they don't want to consume, or that things will be taken away from them that were perfectly fine 10 years ago. And there's a huge difference between, well, we're not going to do that anymore, and we're going to disappear the history of popular culture, right? And I get both those perspectives, and I understand why people are hanging on tooth and nail. And that's why I take the positions that I do. And that's why I'm suggesting that if you do support these free speech personalities, do it in a way that allows people to disagree with you, and set an example of being able to handle that without getting aggressive. Because, I do it myself and I get accused of sitting the fence, but no, I'm not. I'm just being consistent and allowing other people to have views I don't agree with, right? And I'm, being sensitive to the people who watch my content. I don't use the term Latinx because my Latin viewers don't like it. It offends them, so I don't say it. And that would be so stupid to stand on ceremony in that. that's just an example. But then there's other things. No, I make boob jokes. I make, chicharron jokes. You notice I have a rooster to show my love of chicharron from Far Cry 6. But I didn't know if I could say the joke word that's rooster, but also a body part on Twitch. This is the world we live in. So I get it. But let's perform the world that we want to see, not the world we're fighting against. Really interested in your feedback, please. That's the message. All this other stuff, tangents. Don't miss the plot. Let's perform the world we want to see, not the world we're fighting against, okay? Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.